I've never seen my dad jump up and down with excitement, and he literally equated the excitement he was feeling to the birth of his two daughters. I get down on my rifle, and I'm in this old rickety box blind. I'm literally, there's holes in the floor, the roof's caving in. It makes me think what a bunch of pansies we are in today's day and age of literally everything being at our fingertips: food, electricity, heat, Amazon, whatever. Whose dollars do you think get put forth to reinstate that herd back onto the mountain? It's hunters' dollars. Skullbound Chronicles can be found on carbontv.com. It is like YouTube for hunters. This is Jana of Skullbound Chronicles, and you are listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
I would rest at peace for eternity if my legacy was that I made a positive influence on the non-hunting public about what hunters are and what hunting is.
I finally got my buck on our last real day of hunting.
So a pro-hunting organization is voting against hunting. And that says anti-hunting to me.
There was a year straight where I was averaging up to 200 death threats a day.
I hugged it like I just wanted to hug a bear.
It's proven that the average steak in a grocery store touches 50 to 100 hands and machines. And we're putting that into our body.
Hey y'all, Cable Smith, host of the Lone Star Outdoors Show here.
This is Adam Weatherby.
I'm Corey Jacobson with Elk 101.
This is Christy Titus.
Hey folks, this is John Barrett.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Wild Initiative, brought to you as part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective. All right, y'all, so getting on to today's episode, I'm super excited to have Jana of Skullbound Chronicles on with me today. Jana, I feel like we've kind of met each other in passing like 100 times at like Hunt Expo and this and that and the other, and never actually gotten a chance to talk, and then was in Missoula talking with Laura Zara. And she didn't realize that I was friends with Jules and had met you a couple of times. She's like, well, I'm going to lunch with these friends of mine if you wanted to come meet us. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. And then she's like, yeah. And she kind of mentioned who it was. I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's so funny. This industry is actually so small. And I've been in it now 11 years as far as the industry side of things goes. And it's funny. We're all connected. It's used to be this, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I think we could even make that a lot smaller. Like the 4 degrees of pick one person in the hunting industry and we all know each other. Like, yeah. Great minds think alike. And I think really positive people who are out there just to share in the passion seem to, our wavelengths seem to cross and bring us together. So that was a fun lunch a few weeks ago, but I'm looking forward to getting down to the nitty gritty to hear today on the Wild Initiative.
Oh yeah. I can't believe how long it's already been since that. It feels like just last week that I was out in Montana, and it's been over a month at this point, something like that. Has it been?
Yeah. Gosh. It's so crazy with the COVID thing going on right now. Time is such a weird thing. It really is. Like, in one hand, I feel like I'm still sort of trapped in the spring, and because spring was like weird, right? Everybody's March and April was like, what's going on with the world? And now it being August already, it's like, wait, where'd my summer go? Because plans were diverted and changed and travel's so weird. And it's a crazy time we live in right now. But I feel like once the beginning of August hits, all of us hunters start to like, okay, focus. Okay, now's the time. August is like prep month, right? We're all kind of prepping for archery season and getting our gear lists ready, making sure like whatever we need to order isn't on back order and we can get it in our hands by September. And so like, I always laugh at August being the month of all of us hunters scrambling to get stuff ready.
Well, it's funny being out here in California. It's almost more like June for us because we have a lot of our A-zone season starts in July. And then,
oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And then I always end up hunting August in Arizona with that over-the-counter archery tag. And especially this year because I have elk down in Arizona. I'm super like, I'm getting ready to leave in a week or so to head on down. So all of a sudden, August 1st comes up and I'm very much like, I'm not ready at all.
Yeah. That is really early. California is one of the few states I have not hunted at all. So I have not hunted, I have not fished, and it's one of those, states I've got to get to. I don't know much about California or its terrain or its hunting, and it's nice that you get to kick it off a little early.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people that will put in for that A-zone tag, and it's kind of like their secret guilty pleasure. They don't want to tell anyone that they're going to California. But it's like they're like guilty pleasure. They'll buy that A-zone tag and they'll kind of sneak out early season to hunt blacktail. Yeah. And then, then they don't make a big deal of it though, but it's a thing they do every year. I've talked to a few people that are like that, and they're like, don't tell anyone, but I come out to California all the time.
We hunters can keep our secrets, I mean, that's like, oh, that's an awesome picture where you're scouting. Where is that? Well, I certainly am not going to send you my Onyx coordinates. That's for sure. But
conveniently cropped to remove any landmarks and or water or anything.
You take that little healing tool on Snapseed and change that mountain ridge.
Is that Everest in the background? Why does that look like Everest?
What is Mount Hood doing in Montana? Wait a minute. Yeah.
That would be really funny to start doing. Just start swapping mountain ranges in the background of social pictures to see how long it takes. Yeah. Statue of Liberty starts popping up in the middle of
or she's hiding something you don't want people to see, like a really distinct plateau or peak, or that would be really funny.
Oh man, I would love it if you could maybe give the listeners just a little bit of background about yourself. Sure. How did you really get introduced to the outdoors and hunting and all of this? Like, where'd you get your start?
Well, it's a story I've told a lot of times, so I'll kind of simplify it. It's really probably common when you talk to a lot of women, especially my age, of how they got into it. And it was, of course, my dad. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and my dad just noticed a real love of the outdoors. And my dad, I was the second of two daughters, and I'm sure my dad wanted a boy. And the joke is that he kind of turned me into one. But I really also think that a lot of it was just in my blood. I'm so different from my sister. My sister doesn't spend a whole lot of time. The joke is she only goes outside to get to her car. That's the funny joke I've told a million times. It's kind of true. There's a bit of truth in that. But my sister is an amazing woman. She's a great mom, has 3 kids. Our lifestyles are just completely different. But my dad noticed a love of the outdoors, and so he would take me along on his pheasant hunts and on his duck hunts. And when I was 12 years old, signed me up for hunter safety. And I mean, I got my hunter safety in 1983, people. You can do the math. And so that was back in the day where there weren't a lot of other girls really into hunting, but it's the greatest gift he ever gave me. And so when I was in high school, I really wasn't that much into it. Junior high, I was more than high school, because junior high, I just had more time. I wasn't playing high school sports yet. My dad and I would road trip it to South Dakota and pheasant hunt when I was in junior high, and duck hunt around Wisconsin, which is where I grew up. You can probably hear it in my O's. or everybody teases me about the way I say tag or bag. Like, I guess there's not an E in there. What? But not your tag. But anyway, my dad, then when high school, I was really active in sports and stuff. And of course, high school boys and all that stuff teenage girls are into. But then when I went to college, my dad got into bow hunting when I was a freshman in college. Actually, the year before that. But and he got a doe with his bow. And I thought, that's pretty cool, no big deal. I was a freshman in college. My dad was bow hunting. I grew up literally 10 miles from where I went to college. And my dad called me and said, hey, I stuck a buck. Do you want to come help me find it? I can't find it. This is the morning after. And so I said, yeah, I skipped class. I met my dad out in the country. I grew up out in the country. And we went down the road 1 mile for where he had permission on this old country road right next to this big, beautiful cemetery. And it's funny, we walked me back to the stand, and he's like, here it was. My dad this is so funny, and anyone who's a product of so what year would this have been? This would have been 1989. they came out with this string that you attach to your bow, kind of like where the Tacticams go now or your stabilizer goes. And it was attached to the end of your arrow. And so it would at least point you in the right direction for like 50 yards if you shot it. And my dad used that horrible tool. And it's so funny. We laugh about it all the time. So you could literally see the string strung out in the woods and then into the cornfield. But then like after 50 yards, the string runs out. And my dad searched around there.
Is it almost like a bow fishing setup where it's just got 50 yards of string?
Yeah.
Is it supposed to stay attached to the arrow or stay attached to the bow and you like follow it from your bow?
It stays attached to the arrow, and its idea is that it strings out. And like, this is probably why the dumb thing didn't catch on. It's not the most foolproof. It's only, I don't remember how far it was. I'm making up the 50 yards, but it spools out. And even if your arrow goes all the way through, the string is still attached. And as the deer runs, you're hoping the arrow stays in the deer and then you follow the string. Okay. It was only out for like 2 years. We laughed so much that my dad even tried it. But you know how hunters are. We like to try gimmicky new things, you know. Yeah. And the whole idea would be like, if you're in the dark, it's going to lead you towards the deer kind of thing. But this deer, my dad didn't make the best shot. And he didn't remember where he thought he made a good shot, didn't know where it was, but he was smart enough to back out, not push that deer. So he backs out, calls me in the morning. I go meet him up. He shows me the string. We follow the string. The arrow must have stayed in the deer for a little bit. We follow the string into the corn and then it just peters out. We find the arrow and there's nothing there. And we just ended up making kind of these wild circle paths, and we found tracks, and he went one way mind you, this cornfield was just littered with tracks. So we lost the actual buck tracks in amongst the other tracks. I kind of went onto this one path, and I noticed after a little bit that the tracks I were on were dragging, and I started to get really excited. And I was like literally peeking into the row and then next peeking into the row, like peeking into the row. And sure enough, I see a big white butt laying there. And I screamed for my dad, I got your buck. And my dad came over, and this is no joke. My dad was so excited. My dad's kind of a cool, chill guy. He's big, tall guy. He's, 6'2" or 3 and very athletic and chill. And like, I've never seen my dad jump up and down with excitement. And he literally equated the excitement he was feeling in that moment later on in discussions with people to the birth of his 2 daughters. And I remember like just seeing that excitement, and this is 1989, mind you, seeing that excitement in him and how like I've never seen my dad act like that. And then to hear him tell the story in the days after of how he was equating that to the birth of his 2 daughters. I was excited too, but I wanted to feel what he was feeling. I wanted to be that excited. So that year I got a bow, my freshman year in college, and I started shooting it a lot. And I was like a lot of probably beginner archery hunters. I was nervous about taking it into the field. Like, how would I feel when I actually struck an animal with it? So when I talk to a lot of women who are like, I'm afraid of what if I mess up, or what if I make a bad shot? And I know that's very common. I know what that ambivalence feels like, being so excited but nervous at the same time. So I didn't actually go take it into the woods for a year or 2 after that. And I got a doe my first year bow hunting, but that was the start of, that's been 30 years. So like that was the start of my bow hunting passion. And I have been just so incredibly blessed beyond belief to bow hunt the world. And I'm right now sitting in my living room looking at a lot of memories on my wall here. And it's been almost 30 years it's been 30 years, I think, this year, of just one of the greatest passions my dad could have given me.
Is your dad still around?
Yep. My dad is still around. He doesn't bow hunt as much as he used to. We've been on a few, we don't get the opportunity to hunt all that much. My dad is, I would say, sort of, he's very passionate about hunting, but my dad has a lot of passions. He's a huge player of golf. He loves golf. He's the kind of guy in the fall that if it's a beautiful October day, he'd probably rather be golfing than in the woods because he knows he'll get in the woods eventually, so he's not as diehard as some of the other of bow hunters I know in my life, of course, but he's definitely passionate. He's getting older. He is 78, I think. It's funny. I have a great story about my dad had a beautiful place in the Wisconsin Dells. And even though I live in Montana and I've lived here for 11 years, I've gone back almost every single year and either bow hunted or rifle hunted with him since I moved out here. And he had a buy. He's been wanting to sell his cabin for quite some time near the Wisconsin Dells. He just doesn't get up there as much. He's living half of his life in Florida, 6 months out of the year. And so we knew that he's been trying to sell it for about 5 years, and it's a beautiful chunk of property and hasn't been too motivated except the last couple of years. Well, now he has a buyer. And I'm like, oh no, this last fall, I was like, I need to get back there at least one more weekend with him. I don't even care if I notch my tag. The Wisconsin deer season is definitely a lot different than Montana. Montana, we have months to rifle hunt. Mm-hmm. In Wisconsin, it opens up on Saturday and closes the following Sunday, unless you extend with like a muzzleloader season. So it is literally only 9 days. But I said at the last minute, I said, I'm going to come in for 2 days and I'm going to have one more rifle hunt with you at the cabin and it is so funny. It's the quintessential Wisconsin deer camp. Everybody's way more interested in the beer and the fish fry than the deer. My dad's dad used to joke and say, nothing ruins a good deer camp like someone getting a deer down. So these are people that I've hunted this cabin with my dad and my dad's really good friend, Eddie, and Eddie's daughter, Allie, who's in her 20s, who I've been hunting up with her since she was 12. And so it's just, and it's funny, my ex-husband and my stepson, Brennan, who's just an amazing young man in his late 20s, they go every year still. And it's just a beautiful weekend with everybody sharing stories and, everybody coming in for lunch and telling everybody else what they saw, and hardly anybody ever gets a really nice buck down, but once in a while it happens. And my dad doesn't have any food plots, no trail cameras. This is just hardcore Wisconsin old school hunting. It's picking a stand out of the many he has up there and like hoping something walks by you, Mm-hmm. And opening morning this year, I'm not. It's all on my story on Instagram. You can go watch it. It's 2019 Wisconsin buck. Okay. Go watch that story because it spells it out there on Instagram. But I was sitting at opening morning, just having so much gratitude. I did not have a cameraman with me. It was one of the first times in 10 years. I mean, it's no story to anybody now. Jim and I broke up. We were boyfriend, girlfriend for 10 years. We produced Skullbound TV on the Sportsman's Channel. We broke up last year. I am continuing on with the show, calling it Skullbound Chronicles, new episodes coming out on Carbon TV now. But long story short, I went to my dad's by myself, no camera, just to enjoy the weekend. And once in a while, for people who have a TV show or who are in the industry, it's so nice to just appreciate the hunt. You don't have to worry about the cameras. You don't have to worry about, getting the shots. You can just sit there, wallow in the beautiful nature, just be in the moment, have the camaraderie. You don't have to gather B-roll. You can just be in the moment. And it was so nice to do that. And the sun was coming up and I just remember I have shots of my Vortex scope glistening with frost on it. It was a frosty, cold morning. It was such a beautiful morning in the woods. And I saw a flicker of a tail. Am I talking too much? That's what podcasts are for, but I realized that you haven't said anything in about 10 minutes.
No, the best ones are the ones where I don't have to talk. So, because people log in to hear you, not me.
Okay, good. So anyway, I see a flicker of a tail and it's a doe. And I get down on my rifle and I'm in this old rickety box blind that literally should have been condemned 10 years ago. Like there's holes in the floor, the roof's caving in. I had to go out there Friday to check and make sure it was even still standing. And I'm sitting in the window where they're broken out. There's one window on the 6 windows of the box blind still there. And I'm looking out the open window on the left-hand side of it. I see a flicker of a doe's tail and she goes into the woods and out comes this buck. And in my mind's eye, I remember thinking, ooh, he's a shooter. But I only saw him for 2 seconds and he was chasing this doe and they went off. It was about 150 yards into the woods in this one lane. Mind you, if I had more time, I would have cleared all the lanes were grown over. I could hardly see into the woods at all, except this one area. Like, it was like, I sat there with zero expectations because it was so overgrown. This is like such a crapshoot, but it's still so fun to be up there. I see this shooter buck and he darts into the woods and he's kind of going away from me. And I'm like, well, that's exciting. At least there's a big shooter on the property and he looked pretty decent. I didn't get a very good look at him, but my heart was racing for a second and I calmed down and it literally wasn't 3 minutes later, I hear of the leaves directly underneath me. Like, I thought it was a squirrel. I peek out the window and I'm looking straight down, like literally 5 feet from now I'm up in the air, like 10 feet straight down. And it's this buck. Why he left the doe, I have no idea. He literally grazes past the ladder of my stand so close that I have my 28 Nosler with a suppressor on the end of it. I can't even get my barrel low enough to even get a shot at the buck. He walks out in front of me. I get up off my chair. I have to go into the back window and lean down because he's so close to the stand. He gets out about 30 yards. I grunt at him. He stops. I get him in my crosshairs. I fire. He runs behind a pine tree. At this point, I knew it was a nice buck, but I had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. And to end the story short, because I'm boring your listeners, it was 169 2/8 buck, the biggest I've ever shot, the biggest whitetail I've ever shot on my dad's place. And it was literally a God moment. Like, I walked up to that buck, and you'll have to go watch my Instagram story because it's all live and on the fly. I'm just recording it as I go along. And it was such a gift, but it was like the most beautiful way of saying goodbye to 20 years of hunting this cabin with my dad. I said 10 earlier, I didn't. It was 20 years of hunting this cabin with my dad. And to be able, like, my dad never even made it up there to archery hunt one time this year. He just is, he's the classic older hunter, right? He's just not getting into it as much as he can and as much as he used to. And he's sort of trying still to pass it down to his friends and his friends' kids. And it was just such a beautiful way to end 2 decades of hunting my dad's cabin with an amazing buck like that. And so much fun. But that was my highlight story from this past season, no doubt.
It's, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to building myself because, and we've talked before, like, I didn't grow up doing any of this stuff. This is all brand new to me.
Right.
And the one thing that I feel like I am bummed I missed out on is having that history and like that tradition of going to deer camp and having those groups of people that you look forward to seeing every year and having those experiences. And that's something I'm going to have to build. But I've talked with a lot of people on the podcast who, they've got their chucker hunts every year they go with. And it's like 6 generations of guys that have been doing this forever. And I finally did this last year, get a chance to experience deer camp for the first time, which was really exciting. And
where did you go?
We were out in Missouri.
Nice.
I was out with some buddies I know through the POMA organization, and one of them invited a few of us out to his yearly deer camp. And it's the same kind of thing. Not a ton of. It's not like there's trail cams everywhere, and it's this whole set. He's just got a ton of stands absolutely everywhere out there, and you go pick one and that you think's going to be good, and it is what it is. And I've done that, and I've hunted a little bit in tree stands in Mississippi, and it is funny. Some of those tree stands, the tree's kind of half grown into it.
Yeah, you
climb up it, and you just hear those creaks that make you really nervous as you're starting to climb up. You're like, I'm definitely wearing a harness for this one. I am, I am not going to.
Yeah, I've hunted out of all different kinds of stands. I mean, from climber tree stands, which I'm not a huge fan of. I love the independence you have with a climber, but I'm never feeling super duper confident up in a climber. I do not like heights, even though that I've hunted out of tree stands for 30 years. I'm not a fan of them. I've hunted in the rickety old box blinds. I've hunted in ground blinds. I've hunted off the ground. I've done all styles of it. And, it's such a different experience every single kind of hunt like that. But when you are in one of those big, monstrous box blinds, it's funny because I haven't hunted in one in such a long time. It's funny how, like, in this particular one, there's lots of windows. Like I actually think there's 3 little windows on the sides and then one big one on the front and one big one on the back. And this box blind was so big that I can't see out half the front when I'm sitting towards the left window. I can't see out the right at all. And I can barely see out the back. And the back was so overgrown. It's almost anxiety ridden because you can't cover it all. I would so much rather be in a stand that you've got good visual everywhere. Mm-hmm. And now, mind you, gun stands are different than, archery tree stands. But when I sat down in there on my Friday check of the stand, I thought, this is not going to be good. Like, this is going to be, and it's so funny how different times in my life I've felt like that, where I've sat down in a stand and gone like, I don't think so. One of my biggest bucks I ever arrowed, my dad's like, go try this new spot. It was in Wisconsin. This is 20 plus years ago. Go try this new spot. I put up one of our ladder stands. I'd rather have a ladder than a hang on any day, but go try this spot. I remember climbing up in there and going, Dad, what are you thinking? Like, this is not where I would have chosen at all. Like, it's on a big 4-wheeler trail. That's where your main shot is. And then pretty thick behind you. And I remember climbing up in that, but I only had about an hour of the hunt to sit that first night up at the cabin. And long story short, a buck comes in behind me and I turn around and he walks under that stand at about 15 yards behind me. I picked a opening, shot him. One of the biggest bucks I've ever shot with a bow. And it's funny when you get in there and you think, my intuition is saying that this is just a terrible spot. I've had that happen numerous times where I've gotten a really nice animal. So now I learned to just go with the flow.
I don't know. I've gotten into a few spots and I'm like, this just doesn't feel like a good spot. Then I'm like, what am I basing that off of? Like, the 3 times I've ever sat in a tree stand before. I'm like, I don't really have that much intuition. So I'm just going to chill here and trust it's going to be a good thing. But
that's really the beauty of hunting, isn't it? It really is. You never know. And that's why in trying to talk to people who they're not antis, they're just nons. What I call them is non-hunters. Like, they didn't grow up with it. They don't really know anyone else who hunts a whole lot. I do actually meet a lot of people in my circles that don't have anything to do with hunting. And it's fun explaining the beauty of the spontaneity of it all. Like, and that they never really thought about it from that perspective of like, well, why can't you just get why can't you go out for a hike and get the same thing? And like, no, because on a hike, number one, you're moving. You are moving through the terrain. Number 2, you probably got bright colors on, or, or you're not in camouflage. You are not blending into your background. You're not being patient. You're not being as observant, because let's face it, when you're on a hike, you're hiking, you're moving, your heart rate's up, you're thinking about other things. You're not to say you're not enjoying the scenery, but it's completely different when you are on a hunt. And I don't care if you're archery elk hunting and you're in the timber or you're sitting in a tree stand in Missouri, it's different when you're camouflaged. It's different. I believe that every living thing has an energy about us. And whether we're people, animals, living things, we have an energy and we're putting it out there. And I think that it's not that far-fetched to think that animals may pick up on that energy. But when you are sitting there, you're motionless, you're camouflaged, the birds are landing in the trees next to you, you're hearing crickets chirp, and the frogs in the pond 200 yards away you can hear, and the wind is slightly blowing on your face, and it's just such a different experience. The woods come alive, and you're not going to get that anywhere else than hunting. It's that spontaneity. And even though, let's face it, more times than not, you're not going to notch a tag and you're not going to see an amazing animal, but the times that you do, it's magical. It's totally magical. And I don't believe that you can get that plethora of emotions that come with hunting, that the calmness, I've always said to people, I connect more to myself than anything when I'm in the great outdoors. And when I'm hunting, even versus when I do a lot of hiking, I do a lot of camping. But when I'm hunting, I connect to myself. It makes me think what a bunch of pansies we are in today's day and age of literally everything being at our fingertips. Food, electricity, heat, Amazon, whatever. It's at our fingertips. It's instant gratification. We don't have to work that hard for anything. But when I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about how, it wasn't even that long ago where people had to go fetch their own water from the creek. In fact, this is amazing. My boyfriend, John, we were talking to his dad last weekend in Utah, and his dad was showing me pictures of I think he said it was a 2-room log cabin that he grew up in. And it was him and I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 siblings and his parents that grew up in this cabin that didn't even have running water. And his mom, how hard she worked to manage the household, to go get the buckets of water every day, to have to find, food to cook and what a delicacy fresh meat was, and, washing our clothes. And oh my goodness, we are such pansies in today's day and age that hunting makes me connect how hard life used to be and how easy we have it.
It's funny, you bring that up because I've been considering so much lately. I was just while I was in Montana, I was talking with a friend, and they have a yurt that they used to live in I think northwest Montana or northeast Montana. And then now they're down kind of Bozeman area, and they're trying to move their yurt down, and they kept talking about that. I got that bug stuck in my head, and I'm like, I think I would love to do that for a year or something like that, or a couple of years. Just live very, very kind of low key in something like a yurt, and very simplistic. I mean, and those yurts can get pretty fancy. You put down a cement base, you got a heated floor. I mean, you still got to go chop wood for a wood stove to keep the dang thing warm, but. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure I could do it all the time.
But there's something attractive about it. I totally get you. I always joke that I'm going to be the little old lady living up in the woods with 80 dogs and no electricity, because there's something attractive about that. There's something attractive about when I went to guide school in Cody, Wyoming, like 9 years ago. And I remember the outfitters saying that it is so rewarding that when your head hits the pillow after a long day's work, that you just cash out. You are just crashed, right? And he's right. He's right. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, a lot of younger people are being raised in this culture that we live in today at an instant gratification culture. Like whatever they want, shopping, it can be at their door tomorrow. Food, Grubhub, at their door in a half hour. Like instant gratification mode. If they want to talk to their friends, boom, they're FaceTiming, they're Snapchatting, they're whatever. Everything is instant gratification. I grew up in the country where I had to beg my parents to either run me into town, or I would ride my bike after 8 miles into town to see a friend, or we would have to plan a sleepover and plan it 2 weeks out, or, we didn't have cell phones, and we were still pretty pansy comparatively speaking. So it's funny how kids grow up these days in the culture that they're growing up. And it's a little sad to me, these kids who don't have an appreciation for hard work, and how good hard work is so worth it and valuable, and getting your hands dirty and getting involved. And, I've always said it, no one works harder than outfitters or ranchers, because they're working from, sun up to midnight. And, I've learned a lot through my ranching friends and my outfitter friends. And I learned a lot through that 30-day guide school of, just what hard work, how rewarding it is. And I think even hunting can really kind of provide those life lessons as well of, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, working your butt off, whether it's climbing that mountain or getting up at 4 a.m. every morning, or, putting yourself through frigid cold temperatures, and, or a grueling pack out is so worth it. I mean, I've been on pack outs where it's been just one other person and myself packing out a 300-pound bear in the canyons of Montana, and you think you're going to die. And one time we were in a rainstorm, and every step I took, I slipped back down the wet, slimy hillside. And we were actually 3 canyons over from my truck. And we spotted a bear 2 canyons over. And when we were there, we lost that bear, but spotted a canyon in the other canyon, and so we were 3 canyons over. And by the time we got back to the truck, it was literally almost daylight the next day. And it was rainy. My headlamp ran out. I was using the cell phone until that died. And it was a tough backup. But then when you're back and the next day you're celebrating the hunt and you've got your sore quads and you can hardly move your back, but it's so rewarding. And I don't know many other things in today's day and age that can provide those life lessons like hunting can.
I'm trying to think of anything that can provide a similar experience. And I feel like there's so many things that can contribute a similar, like a small piece of that whole experience.
Yeah.
It's
like athletics.
Exactly.
I think athletics, it takes a lot of hard work. Your hard work pays off, by winning the championship or winning a personal medal. Or I think athletics is similar in that way a little bit. As far as the kind of life lessons that can teach you about endurance and, hard work. But at the same time, you hang that trophy on the wall or that medal on your, wall above your desk kind of thing. And you look at it and you tell the stories of it all. But I also don't think it has the component hunting does of sharing in the hunt. Like I was talking to, I'm going to have a brain freeze right now, Shane Mahoney. And he was talking about how hunting stands alone because of just the sharing in the meat. That process of sharing in the meat is so unique. And when you think about it, when you go to Costco and let's say you buy a huge rack of ribs, and even though if it's only two of you in the household, you don't take the extra ribs to your neighbor. It's just, they would think that was really weird. But if you get an elk or a moose or, a big animal down and you've got a lot of meat, it's so fun. Taking some deer sausage over to your friends or your coworkers, your neighbors. I've shared my moose, I've shared elk, I've shared every kind of meat with my friends, my family, my hairdresser, whatever, my dentist, you name it. That sharing of the meat is something that goes back, century after century after century back in the day. And I think that's something so special that, with athletes, yes, you learn athleticism and athletics, you learn a lot of the same lessons you do through hunting, but there's so much more that hunting provides as well.
There's just something very real and visceral about it that you don't get through athletics. It's just such a wider experience. And like I was saying, you can have so many things that can contribute a small piece of that. Yeah. But to get that same experience that you would get in hunting, you would have to do hundreds of other activities or different things. It's an amazing, unique thing.
Yeah. If there's one good thing that's coming out of this chaotic thing we're living in right now, this COVID world we're living in, I think it's people are going to have a much deeper appreciation for where their food comes from. This is the first time in decades where people have gone into the grocery store and there have been empty shelves, right? And I'm not just talking toilet paper shelves. The dairy products, meat sections have been low. And I think that people, if there's anything good that could come out of this whole COVID chaos, is that people are having a bigger sense of gratitude for where their food comes from, maybe a sense of, looking at hunting in a little bit different light. We hunters kind of forget that there's 90% of the population that do not hunt and have never really been exposed to it. And so I think it's important for us to remember that perspective, that there's a lot of people who don't understand our lifestyle. And maybe I just feel like there's a little bit of a shift in people understanding now of what a beautiful thing it is to be able to go out and gather your own fish and birds and deer and elk. And in my case, bear, mountain lion. I mean, I live in the West where we eat predators and they're delicious. And, it's a beautiful thing. And I think if anything, a sense of at least appreciation for that, people are coming to understand that perspective better. And that's what we need. We need to introduce as many people as we can to our lifestyle, because if they understand all the benefits that come from hunting and that there are more animals on the planet because of hunters, we don't necessarily have to have them join the ranks and I'm going to hunt now. As long as they support it, as long as when they go to the polls, they're not voting for politicians that want to abolish our gun rights, that want to take away our hunting and trapping and fishing rights, as long as they're supportive of that and they understand the conservation side of it all, that's what we need. That's what we can hope. That's the best we can hope for.
That's the thing. We don't need everyone in America to become hunters. I mean, Don't get me wrong. That would be awesome. Well, to some extent, but then it'd be a whole lot harder to get elk tags.
Yeah, exactly.
But, we don't need each and every person to be out in the woods. And I mean, I think everybody in the world should try it at least once, whether it's, upland game or waterfowl or deer, whatever it happens to be. But if they're educated and they understand how hunting contributes, I mean, so many conversations I've had just with random people. When you can actually sit down and have an adult conversation with someone versus yelling back and forth on Facebook, right, which I just don't even get involved in or invested in anymore. But when you're able to sit down, especially face to face, and have that conversation with someone and talk about how hunting contributes to that and why we have the wildlife we do these days, why we have elk and wood duck and wild turkey and pronghorn and gosh, I mean, the countless species that have been brought back from the verge of extinction. Right. I mean, the sole fact that I think I told someone the other day, I was explaining to him, where was I? That's going to bug me. But we were sitting around someone's like kitchen island and we were just talking about hunting. And the funny thing is, the person I was kind of debating with was not the vegan. The vegan was sitting there next to me, helping me defend the side of hunting. Really? And then the person we were kind of quote unquote arguing with, we were just discussing, she was like, she'd go to McDonald's and have a hamburger any day. And so I thought that alone was pretty funny to me. But the whole time we were sitting there talking, and I explained to her, I'm like, here's the deal. In North America, no animal has ever gone extinct due to legal hunting. Just the opposite. They've been brought back from the verge of extinction because of legal hunting. And she's sitting there and she's looking at me. She's like, that can't be right. I'm like, no, trust me.
Just tell her to Google Pittman-Robertson Act.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is a disconnect. You're so right. It really is. People don't understand. Like, I use the example of, all the time, of bighorn sheep. Bighorn sheep are very sensitive to pneumonia. They're sensitive to infection from domesticated sheep. And I asked them, wouldn't it be a sad thing if, look at that mountain over there, and let's say there's a herd of 30 sheep. Wouldn't it be a shame if pneumonia, which is very easily contracted, went down and wiped out that herd? Wouldn't you agree that's a shame? And they would say yes. Well, that happens a lot. Whose dollars do you think get put forth to either help the herd out in its state or to reinstate that herd back onto the mountain? It's hunters' dollars. It's through organizations like the Wild Sheep Foundation. It's through the Pittman-Robertson Act, which is an act from 1937 that was actually put in place so that hunters couldn't overhunt things, and so that we could have a healthy management plan. And people don't understand that when you go buy a license, when you go buy a hunting license, a fishing license, or hunting related products, guns, ammunition, and now other products that fall under that category, it's taxed. And that excise tax goes into a fund. And that fund that generates the wildlife management dollars for every single state. Hunters are the ones paying for the majority of wildlife management in this country through that excise tax, through the tax on our hunting products, through all the hunter-based conservation groups like the National Wild Turkey Federation, the Mule Deer Foundation. It's hunters' dollars doing that. It's hunters' dollars paying for all the wildlife studies and the biologists' salaries, even though they're disgustingly low. And that is when you have these, like you said, mature conversations with people. Most of them, if they have a brain, are like, it's just a disconnect. They just don't understand it. And unfortunately, we're bad at telling our story. We hunters, are bad at talking to the non-hunters or even the antis. We're bad at sharing why we do what we do. We're good at the celebratory photos, which we all do, right? Because that's our moment to be like, it all came together. Look at my bull, look at my moose, look at my deer. Like those are grip and grins, but there's so much behind that grin that the average non-hunter doesn't understand. But we're getting better at it. In the last few years, there's definitely been a shift of people sharing the entire process and not just passing around the Polaroid like my back in the day. Like literally, I still have a deer picture of a Polaroid. It's really funny. But in fact, that buck I was talking about, I have a Polaroid of it. But it is true but we're getting better at sharing the why of why we hunt. There's documentaries like Blood Origins out there. There's everyone now is kind of sharing the entire process and, holding up the backstrap pictures. As much as people make fun of those now, it's still true. Like, it's still exciting. Like, I'm filling my freezer with this beautiful organic meat. I know where it comes from. I know that my notch tag is going to, or my license is going to help fund wildlife management. Like, the conservation model in the United States is the most successful model of its kind. Other countries are trying to model it after the North American conservation model. And it's a story we just need to continue to share and continue to post about.
Well, we're getting better about sharing it. And like you said, you brought up some fantastic people that are really doing an incredible job of sharing it. I think where we struggle is we have an emotional investment in it, but we are not great about sharing that. We share the facts and we share the data and think, well, everyone's going to be just as reasonable as we are. Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, the one thing that the anti-hunters are so good at doing is getting people emotionally invested in what they're saying and just projecting out that emotion behind it, because that's all they've got.
Right.
They don't have the facts, figures, or a reality to back it up. So they just push that emotion hard. We are terrible at doing that generally.
Yeah.
But, you brought up some good people, Blood Origins. I've had the guys on the podcast, and they do an incredible job of sharing that emotion behind conservation and what we do. Shane Mahoney. Holy crap. You want to talk about guys that I just want to like listen to Shane on loop talking about conservation, like, because I tend to lose myself when he begins talking about sharing meat. Or I remember hearing him on somebody else's podcast. I can't remember whose, but somebody else's podcast. And he was just telling this story about watching two elk battling, and you're sitting there and you realize like your jaw's been dropped for like the last 10 minutes as he's telling this story. That probably took place in about 30 seconds. But the way he describes it and the landscape and everything.
Yeah, he's very compelling. Yeah, way he's very compelling, very knowledgeable. There's so many people out there that, in my opinion, are just champions. And the problem with it is getting them in front of that audience, like we talked about. Mainstream media doesn't do hunters any favors. They love to portray us still in movies, as tobacco chewing, shooting from the truck. They don't do us any favors, and it's hard to get projects out there like Blood Origins. At least that's on Amazon Prime. Amazing projects like Jason Matzinger's Project Elk and Project Mule Deer are such beautiful pieces that I think they're on YouTube now. You can go Google them. But the problem is getting it out there in front of the masses and having mainstream media, TV shows and movies pick them up. At least now, though, there's been some shows that portray hunting in a positive light, like, Life Below Zero shows sustainable living. Believe it or not, Hunger Games now was a wonderful thing for archery, showing Katniss and her strength and her, ability with the bow. And you might laugh and think, but that's very impactful for a lot of young women. And to be able to say, oh, maybe I want to shoot a bow. And sometimes it can take something as simple as that. But we hunters need to band together stronger, stop ripping each other apart. If I've always said this, that if people understood the forces that are going on behind the scenes, all you have to do is follow Sportsmen's Alliance. They're an organization based out of Ohio that every single hunter should be a member of. They are the ones battling the court battles. They're the ones helping fund these court cases that are ridiculous. For example, they've had numerous battles in the last couple of years of these anti-hunting groups trying to ban all types of dog hunting. pheasant hunting, not just dogs for bears and cats, but pheasant hunting, duck hunting. And anyone who owns a bird dog knows these dogs live for that. Any houndsman knows that their dogs live to hunt. And luckily, the Sportsmen's Alliance has done a really good job of winning those battles. But there's a lot of dollars needed to go behind, those causes. And hunters need to get up off the couch, get involved, and join these organizations, not only in sharing their stuff on social media, because that can help, but also help if become a member, you can join 10 conservation groups for under $1 a day. I mean, literally, they're usually 25, $35 a year. And that money helps to go fight the causes, to get the messages out there. If you can, donate to, and like right now, the National Wild Turkey Federation is having a big call to action. This COVID has really done a lot of damage on these conservation groups. They're not able to have their banquets. Some of them are having online banquets, but they're not able to generate the money that they need to simply, they're a business too. They need to get their messages out there. They need to support these projects that they get behind and fund. A lot of them help fund gathering up land that's going on sale so that it goes into public hands. We need to all get involved better. I'm involved, but I can even do a better job. Like, we just need to band together stronger and support these causes that are fighting for what we believe in.
And I don't think people as hunters, I was lucky. I got introduced to the North American model of wildlife conservation early as I was kind of being introduced into hunting, but I don't think a lot of people coming in get that message right away. Again, it's spread better than it used to be because of all the media we have. But I don't think people realize the breadth of organizations that are out there. I mean, not even counting just local organizations, but I mean, if there is a species or topic within the hunting or outdoor world that you are interested in, there is a conservation organization specifically for that. I mean, I was putting together a project because I've kind of put them on hold for a while just because I've been so busy, but I've been doing, I call them conservation coffee breaks.
Love it.
So twice a week, I was releasing a short episode introducing a conservation organization. And I started putting together this list. I'm like, somebody's got to have a full list, like a full list of all of the different kind of hook and bullet focused conservation organizations. And I'd find all these websites that have like, the top 10 conservation organizations you need to find, or here's our favorite 5 conservation organizations, this, that, and I couldn't find like a comprehensive list anywhere. So I just started a project and I started making my own. And right now, I think, just looking at kind of national organizations, I think I'm up to about 40, something like that. And I've got them broken out on the website into categories with links to all their pages and stuff. But every time I interview someone, I find out about 2 more organizations that I'd never heard of. So there's opportunity out there for people to get involved. It is not difficult. There's zero excuse.
Even if it's like at the local level, get involved. Like, I guarantee you there's NWTF or MDF chapters right near you. Wherever you are, there's one near you. Find out who the president is or the board members are and get involved. Ask them how you can help. Even if it's helping for a banquet, even if it's going out and like taking down some fence or planting trees, or, MDF has done a lot of those lately. Even if it's helping, call your neighbors and fundraise. There's so many things that people can get involved in, and it takes everybody. It's going to take all of us to band together and get involved. And if people think, look at our world today. Okay. We are living in the most chaotic craziness on the planet. And if you don't stand tall for something, you're going to fall for anything. The old saying goes, and it's so true right now. And we have got to stand tall for hunting, got to stand tall for protecting our gun rights right now. Mm-hmm. How we can do that is going out and getting involved in the conservation groups, like we just said, but also getting out there and voting for the people that are going to defend our lifestyle. And that is critical.
That is, I think we get so often so focused on on single issues or get distracted by so many things when it's time to head to the polls that we don't really critically look at all of the candidates. And we really need to look at their history, where they stand on those issues, on the full variety of things, or the full gamut of things that are important to us. Right. We can't just focus on one single thing or make an assumption that because wherever they are, that they are the ideal candidate for us. It's very important thing.
It's critical we all get out in November and vote. And at the same time, it's also critical that we all get involved in some form or fashion with conservation groups. And that can be literally as simple as sharing their messages.
Yes. You know? Oh my gosh. How hard is it to share a story or repost a post on Instagram?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem like much, and some people might call it lazy. Like, I think, yeah, you should get even more invested in that. But if that shares that message with one or two people, you never know how exponentially that can grow.
Right.
So if folks wanted to find you online, follow along with Skullbound and all of that, where can they hunt you down?
They can find me. My website is skullboundtv.com. If they Google Skullbound Chronicles, which is, so just to explain real quick, I had Skullbound TV for 9 years. We just ended my 9th season on the Sportsman's Channel. And I now am doing the same show, but I wanted to be able to name it the same, but a little bit different so people knew where to find it. And that's Skullbound Chronicles. Skullbound Chronicles can be found on carbontv.com. It is like YouTube for hunters. It's free. There's never going to be a subscription fee for it. You can watch it anytime. You can share the links just like YouTube. I believe it's how people are really engaging and getting their adventure TV. You know, they might not want to sit through. They might not want to, first of all, dedicate their evenings to like Monday nights, which is what I used to run on the Sportsman's Channel. They might want to watch it when they're on break at work. They might want to watch it when they're sitting on the TV and their family's watching The Bachelor, you know. So carbontv.com, Skullbound Chronicles is my show. Season 1 of Chronicles was highlights of the past decade. Season 2 is all brand new episodes. And I launched that a couple weeks ago. I've already got a handgun mountain lion hunt on there. And my most recent is a fun camping tips and tricks. You know, with everybody trying to deal with COVID the best they can, one of the things people can do is just get outside, go camping. You know, you're still social distancing from people. You're getting into the great outdoors, which is so healing. I mean, if you are an experienced camper, this video, you're going to go, didn't learn anything. But if you're kind of new to camping, there's some really fun tips and tricks in there that might make your camping a little bit more enjoyable, might make you talk your kids or your spouses into getting out there and trying it for the weekend. But that's my latest episode. I'm going to be releasing in the coming weeks my Idaho bear hunt with the handgun. We got 2 great black bears on video with the Desert Eagle 429. So it's going to be, you never know what you're going to get, from monster sturgeon fishing to black bears with a handgun. It's going to be a really great season. I've got some great hunts coming up this fall, and they're all going to go directly to Skullbound Chronicles on Carbon TV.
Awesome. So one thing I always like to wind down with is, say you run into someone, wherever it may be, they know you're a hunter. They know you have a passion for the outdoors, but you know, they're talking to you and you know, I have no background in this. I have no friends or family that do it. And there's a lot to learn. Like, this is really intimidating. I really want to do it, but I don't know if I can. What would you say to that person to encourage them, or kind of what words of wisdom would you give them?
My advice is always to find someone that they trust and have a good relationship with, to shadow that person. I think that one of the biggest mistakes people can make is wanting to get their spouses or kids into hunting and throwing a gun in their hands. Like, we're going to go to the range and, okay, here's my 300 Win Mag or my 30 Nosler, go for it. You know, like, no, that can be so intimidating for people and they don't even know I think the best practice is to shadow somebody, even if it's for a whole season, or maybe it's just one hunt. Shadow somebody, go into the duck blind with them and just go along. You don't have to have a weapon in your hands. And you know, nowadays a lot of states have that mentorship program where they don't have to go through hunter safety. They can go through a mentor, which is a great thing. I'm not knocking that at all. But if you're someone new who feels intimidated and you don't know where to start, go out, shadow somebody. Go sit in the tree stands. If you're ask, but you've got to ask for the order. Like my dad used to say when I was in outside sales, you got to ask for the order. If you are interested in hunting and you want to learn more about it, you've got to talk with your friends or even coworkers or uncle or whoever it may be that you know hunts, and say, hey, I'm kind of interested in that. I'm finding that interesting. And how do you do that? Ask them all the questions that you need to ask them, but then ask them, do you think there's any way I could shadow you? I think that's the best way to learn. You're going to see, what the whole experience is like. You're going to see that, even though a lot of people kind of make some types of hunts like archery, elk hunting or something like you got to be able to run marathons to do it. No, you don't necessarily have to. Every state is different. All the terrain is different. Don't be intimidated and think you have to run a 26-miler to be able to go elk hunting. You don't have to. It's great to be in shape. Don't get me wrong. And there's certain exercises you can do to get in shape, to be a better hiker, to carry more weight. But ask to shadow somebody. I think that's the best way to get the experience. There's a lot of really great programs out there. In fact, the best one that I know of off the top of my head, the Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt is put on every year by the Wyoming Women's Foundation. It is to encourage women to get outside, sustainability, to encourage strength in women. It's an all-women's program, but I believe every single state should offer such a thing. I don't even care if it's fishing, duck hunting. Wyoming is lucky enough to have just an amazing pronghorn herd, and all these ranchers have gotten involved. And over the years, they've really gotten it's a 2-day. You show up, I believe, on Thursday night, you hunt Friday, hunt Saturday, and you leave Sunday. That's how quick the program is. And they only have space for so many women. But this program should be modeled by every single state because it's to encourage new women hunters. But ask people to go along. Shadow people, to me, is the best advice I could give.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate you hopping on the line. Had a great time chatting with you.
It was so fun chatting with you, Sam. Let's do it again here, maybe mid-fall, and we can talk about some specific styles of hunting or we should have a podcast about everything that can go wrong, because after 30 years, I could definitely talk about that.
That sounds perfect.
Okay, good. Thanks for having me on, Sam.
All righty, y'all. That'll do it for this episode of The Wild Initiative. Check out the show notes page at thewildinitiative.com. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. That'll do it for this week. Looking forward to next time. But until then, I hope this podcast inspired you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.